All right, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. My name is Josh Swinson. I'll introduce the rest of the team here in just a second, but we really appreciate you taking the time to join us for our webinar today on best practices around integration planning. We're going to talk about 5 factors to consider when you're planning your integration between your GIS and EAM system. So as I said, I'm Josh Swinson. I lead sales and marketing here at Geonexus. Very happy to have with me today a couple of members of our team. James Render, who's our senior sales engineer here at Geonexus, and then Lindsay Sutherland Vaharia, who leads our customer success efforts. And they're going to lead most of the discussion around the 5 factors and the best practices that we're considering for integration planning, as they have a wealth of knowledge and experience in this particular area. One quick housekeeping note as we get started here. Please feel free to use the Q&A function on the right side of your screen to submit any questions that you have, and we'll do our best to move those in to the discussion as we move through things. If it fits with the subject matter that we're discussing at that time, we'll go ahead and add the question in there and answer it. And then if not, we'll do our best to answer a couple of questions at the end as time permits. So feel free to send those our way, and we'll work them into the discussion here. A quick overview of the agenda. As we said, we're going to review 5 factors or 5 best practices around things that you need to be thinking about and considering as you plan your integration between GIS and your EAM. And as we move through those, we'll cover off a lot of different points on the individual best practices. We're going to sprinkle in some customer examples and stories around the best practices. And then, of course, at the end, we'll move to some Q&A as time permits. So before we get started into the best practices, just to level set with everyone and to make sure that everyone that's on the call is aware of who Geonexus is and what we do, I thought I'd give a brief overview of our company. And a brief understanding of what it is our product does and the challenge that we're solving in the market with our platform. So Geonexus was founded in 2019. So we've been around for quite a while. Our headquarters are based in Ann Arbor, Michigan. But our base of teammates and our team is spread throughout the United States with a couple of folks international at this point in time. We have about 50 plus active customers. Almost all of which are in the utility space where we've operated almost exclusively. There are plans to expand upon that and support GIS and other system integrations in some other industries as we grow. And we have an international presence with the majority of our customers in North America, throughout the United States and Canada. And then we do have customers in the UAE and the Middle East, as well as in Australia. We have a very strong partnership with Esri, among other technology partners. But we're a silver partner of Esri's. We've won some awards, and we've also grown our specialties within the utility network, which is a hot topic, and then other areas as well. But we take our partnership with Esri very, very seriously, and we work to keep that tie strong and to continue to grow as they grow as a company. And then in terms of our focus, in terms of what we do from a product perspective and from a company perspective, I find the best way to kind of talk about what we do is a little bit through the challenge that's out in the market, and that's about integrating your 2 systems. But at its core level, at its high level, what we're all about is ensuring the integrity of your data, right? We want the data between your GIS system and your EAM system to match. We want you to have faith in that data and in the integrity of that data. And we do that in a way that's different, that's been done over the last 10 years. The last 10 years has been a lot about custom development and large custom development projects to build integrations between these 2 systems. And we're really the new and trending way of tackling this challenge. And that is providing an out-of-the-box, productized, fully supported, easy to use, proven platform to integrate those 2 systems. To dive a little bit deeper into that, specifically what our platform does, there's kind of 3 main components. So we help you integrate your data at that data level, right? So we allow you to look at those data sets that are important to you, to look at those attributes that are important to you, and to integrate at that data level, making sure that integrity is in place, and making sure that there's a bidirectional synchronization of that data at the time of your choosing and at the frequency of your choosing. It can also be one directional if that's what you'd like it to be, but there's that real integration at the data level that's important. And then in terms of the ongoing operations throughout the day, we integrate at the application level as well, right? So we're connecting those applications that your teams are working with on the GIS side and on the EAM side, and connecting those in near real time as the different components of their applications are changing. We're keeping up with those as well so that they can stay aligned as they do their work out in the field. And then lastly, as we said, we're all about a data integrity. We want to ensure that quality of the data, and we do that through data reporting. So through some of the reporting that's built into our platform, as well as some of the error and issue notification that's there, really to let you understand the integration that you've set up, that you've configured, that you've mapped, to make sure that you understand that it's working as intended. And so we do that through a large reporting suite that's built into the platform. So the Geonexus integration platform, which is the name of the product that we offer to the market, is really built with this understanding of a library of connectors, right? So our offering to the market is that we have all of these different productized connectors that plug into their system so that they can connect those and then configure the data to move between the two systems, to provide you that data integrity. This visual here shows you the library of connectors that we have in place today. And our vision is to continue to grow these. So we have connectors to Esri, obviously, as I mentioned, IBM Maximo, SAP, Oracle, ABB, and very soon we'll come out with a connector for Infor EAM, and the list continues to grow. So we have a roadmap in place and a vision to continue to grow this library of connectors so that we can connect more and more systems that are important through your organization and get that data flowing and synchronized throughout many of the different systems within your organization. So that's a little bit about Geonexus and the Geonexus integration platform and the product we provide. And now on to the fun stuff and the topic at hand in terms of planning for that integration. If you choose to take the path of going our route of the easy-to-use productized solution, we want to talk about a couple of decisions and a couple of things you need to think about before you get there. So, as many of you know, the connection between GIS and EAM systems and really getting them to work together in harmony has been a hot topic, especially for utility companies, right? So we have these conversations on a daily basis with companies that are looking to evolve and looking to align some of the processes between these two portions of the organization. We talk to them on a daily basis about that effort. And that's kind of the good side of the story. That's when, we love having these evolution stories where people are looking to just make things better within their organizations. We also have conversations with folks when they've come to us when things are not aligned. Maybe they have a custom integration that's been put in place and there's been some type of critical failure, right? And so those are the conversations that, we're willing to help with, but they're a little bit tougher. And either way, those are kind of two ways that people enter into our orbit. And we start to have discussions about whether or not the Geonexus integration platform is the right solution for what they're looking to do within their organization. And so what follows in terms of these best practices are really these conversations that we have with them and these things that we ask them to think about in terms of integration, the path to integration, the integration journey and planning. And so what we thought is we bring these to you and kind of have the conversation out in the open so that you can learn from some of these conversations that we're having behind the scenes. And the first thing that we really talk about as we get into that integration planning is understanding the fundamentals behind what an integration is going to do and what they need to be looking at in terms of systems. And so we like to walk through just kind of defining those fundamentals. And so to do that and to dig into that, James Render is going to talk to us a little bit about what it means to define the fundamentals of your integration during planning.
Thanks, Josh. So getting in to the first item here, defining the fundamentals. It's really about considering the structure of the integration. And within that, we have items here that we typically talk with our customers about, which include which system is the system of record, where do assets exist currently, and how are hierarchies architected in each system. So drilling down into each one of those, which system is the system of record? It's really about where are assets created and maintained. So you might have different types of assets that have different use cases for who is the system of record. You might have different use cases within that asset class of which system owns each attribute, right? Once the asset is born and created. So really, where is that maintained, right? And considering, does this integration need to be bidirectional? So then we can start to take a look at where do assets currently exist. And that's the consideration of, is this a data load project, right? Is this a migration or data load into a new system? Or do records currently and assets currently exist in both edge system that we're integrating? And then if so, do unique keys exist on those records to bind them between the two systems? And then finally, how are hierarchies architected in each system? So that involves doing it really a deep analysis into how the structure of your EAM or ERP system is constructed. And this is a lot of times based on your utility and choices you've made along the way. There are industry standards out there and things that we see that are more best practice. So it's really a consultative approach in analyzing the hierarchy and determining how can we build out the hierarchies in a like-for-like manner between the two systems. An example of that could be in the utility network, how is an assembly and device type hierarchy transmitted to SAP or IBM Maximo location asset equipment hierarchies. All right, so then once we've done that, considering that structure, now we can start considering details, right, of the fundamentals of the integration. So what are those? How are assets classified between systems? All right, how are they categorized? Which system owns asset attribution? And then, or what does your organization hope to achieve by doing this integration? Is this an asynchronous or a synchronous integration that you need? So drilling down again into each one of those, how are assets classified between systems? This really relates to asset classification, right? And how something in your Esri system might be represented, let's say in a feature class, versus how that like item could be represented in a classification within SAP or a class within Maximo. Is the hydrant feature class, or let's say in utility network, the hydrant device, does that equal the hydrant Maximo classification? So understanding that, and now do you have those classifications built out between the systems, and do you need to do some work there before you can start considering which type of integration platform you want to go with? Which system owns asset attribution, right? So that's, again, starting to consider some of this bidirectional capability within the platform that you're going to choose. So is this a type of integration that is owned by one side of the equation? Or does it need to be bidirectional? Is the asset, let's say, created in GIS through an as-built process, created then into SAP, but then that asset is then maintained in SAP from that point moving forward, right? Its life cycle is then maintained in SAP. And then finally, what does your organization hope to achieve by integrating? So that, again, that could be what does it hope to achieve in the sense of, is it an asynchronous or synchronous integration, or beyond the integration itself, are you looking to build out a mapping interface within your EAM ERP system? Are you looking to integrate field type inspection applications with your systems and transmit that to others? So it looks like we had a question of if your organization doesn't have a solidified system of record currently, can you still pursue an integration given that? And the answer is yes. So there's a few really defining items here, is that defining the system of record, right, is a process, and it involves engaging business and operational resources from the onset. So during an implementation, going into it, a lot of what is done in the upfront are workshops and conversations with those, let's say, organizational power users to understand and work through your scenarios to help you define a system of record. And our customer success team works with customers to help do this, right? To help define system of record, and really beyond that, attribute ownership right between the edge systems. So that could be bidirectionally going through the, again, asset classifications and determining for this asset class, GIS as built that, and then we'll create that item into the EAM ERP system. And then from that, again, like the example I gave earlier, from that point forward, let's say SAP might own that maintenance of the item, the asset going forward. However, you could have, a more complex situation where then GIS could also update like the status of the asset. Right, assets aren't necessarily static and they don't live forever. So we talk about establishing retirement rules and how an integration should be able to handle that type of interaction with the edge systems, and communicating if GIS might, sometimes delete a record, how should that be represented in SAP? Or if SAP updates a status of a piece of equipment, how should that be represented back into GIS?
So James, with best practice number 2, talk a little bit about that situation where you consult people about the decision to buy or build.
Sure. Yeah. So, there's some main factors there, and the overarching factor really is considering time. And what that means is it could be considering time in the upfront cost, right, of building an integration from a custom perspective, and considering time during maintenance of that integration. So from a custom perspective, and the way we look at it really is from the perspective of, if you have to complete development tasks upfront, which is coding, which could be categorized into coding the actual endpoint of the API that you're attempting to interact with, or even coding the business logic. So beyond coding the endpoint, then understanding how that endpoint needs information sent to it in a specific order of operation, depending on the application you're dealing with. So any software, or scripting could fall into the custom route, depending on if you have to complete those certain tasks. But the one that the benefit of kind of going with the custom solution could be that, because you have to do all this heavy upfront development and spending a lot of time in that, it is theoretically completely customizable. So from that perspective, it might give you a little bit more flexibility, but in the end, it's about considering time. How much time and how many resources are you really spending on this upfront activity that's really not engaging any operational knowledge, any of the business workflows that you have at your utility. So that's, from the custom perspective, that's how we look at it, Once that is developed, then those custom built integrations, again, because they are completely customizable and everything that the developers have done up front, it's not dynamic. once it's developed. So typically those things aren't reusable. If you wanted to communicate with other aspects of the system, you have to, again, start building out those endpoints and that business logic. And it's also not dynamic in maintenance, right, over time. So the last point here, long cycles for and resource intense activities required to make changes, right? So it's just going to equate to high maintenance costs over time. So if we're, again, this choosing the method section here, it's all about considering time. So if we're looking at this like an off-the-shelf productized solution, again, we could have softwares out there that we would still consider custom routes, right? Because you have to code those endpoints, you have to code that business logic. So, an off-the-shelf productized integration solution should be able to be stood up in days to weeks, right? No coding required, really, right? Low code at most. So that model should also then include that business logic built into the connector, right? Into the endpoint. So again, it's not enough just to say I can build an endpoint connector to a system. What about all the business logic now that exists within that application? Right, you still need to build that out. So that, an off-the-shelf product solution should include all of this. And what is this going to give you? It's going to give you the ability to realize time to value quickly, right? However, again, comparing it to that custom route, it's not completely customizable. So in the end, right, you should, if you're looking at this off-the-shelf productized method, right, look for a configurable approach, which will speed initial implementation and engage something that the industry calls a citizen integrator model to manage changing business needs going forward. Do we have any questions at this point? We can go on to item number 3 here.
Yeah, so James, there was a question that I wanted to put out there. So it okay. It looks like reading between the tea leaves of this question, there's an organization that has started a custom integration, and they're wondering when it's too late to switch over to a productized solution. So it looks like the custom integration path kind of took off and didn't get going as quickly as they'd like it to go. They're wondering, is it too late to go ahead and switch over to a productized solution at this point?
Yeah, we've had customers come to us when they realize, let's say after 6, 9, 12 months, that the approach they're taking, right, let's call it, again, a customer approach they're taking, is going to be a burden to maintain going forward, right? It's going to be a burden to not only finish the implementation, but manage, right, over the next 5 to 10 years, or right, however long they're looking at this project to last. So going with a productized approach, right, with these pre-built business logic connectors, again, can be stood up quickly and allow you to focus on data quality and maintainability. So we've come in to customers who have been at that stage and implemented quickly, got them back to the point where they, for lack of a better word, have gotten stuck during the implementation phase, and help them move forward past that. So really, if the integration method you've selected doesn't engage operational and business experts from the onset, that's a red flag. You're going to have issues in UAT and maintainability over the long term. So it's really never too late to switch.
Excellent. Great answer. That makes sense. So moving forward on to best practice 3 here, we've talked about, kind of the initial fundamentals that we need to build. We've talked about, this big decision about whether you're going to buy, whether you're going to build or whether you're going to buy, and now we're to the point where we need to start talking about, the players in the room and how we're going to stand this thing up when we get there. And so, James, talk to us a little bit about implementing and what it means to implement efficiently and what we need to be thinking about to make sure that we're implementing efficiently.
So I'm going to just go right to the citizen integrator model. So looking at that, right, during an implementation phase, now that you've chosen your solution, does that solution engage all interested parties from the onset, right? Does it engage the organizational knowledge power users that understand your business processes, understand how the operational side of your business functions? Because they're the ones going forward who are going to be updating information in the edge system. So the integration is going to have to essentially handle what they're doing from a business perspective, right? From an operational perspective. So then the question is, who has that organizational knowledge, right, to understand business needs, right? And it doesn't necessarily need to be someone who is a developer, right, who can write code. If you're going with a out-of-box approach, right, that has these things built into it, you're really going after those users that, again, understand the business side and then understand how that can interact with other systems. So it's not necessarily, your normal user, and it's not necessarily your high-end IT developer, right? It's going to be someone in the middle there. It's really about engaging those business experts. So, and then over the course of the life of the integration, right, maintaining efficiently, and dynamic configuration. So what does that mean? Right, during implementation, right, and during management of this integration, is feedback and validation important within the solution that you're using to do the configuration inside of. So if the application does have a user interface that can be configured, is it letting you know when data types don't match? Right? Is it easily configurable? Is it allowing you to do dynamic translations? Is it giving you, right, is there a native error reporting system that's embedded in the application? And then again, maintaining efficiently, how often will business needs change, right? So how often will you cycle this integration and possibly add new fields, right? If you're building out field applications, how often will you need the integration to be updated to handle new attribution? How often do you update your asset lifecycle rules? Who can retire assets? Asset swap out scenarios. So there's, for rotating assets. So there's all sorts of business needs that change really on a daily basis, but definitely monthly. And so how dynamic is that implementation strategy that you've chosen to go with?
Yeah, that's great stuff, James. Thank you. So we're going to switch gears a little bit here. We've been talking about kind of the technical aspect a little bit of the decisions that need to be made, and some more of the under the hood, looking at the things that you need to align from a system perspective. And there's been some organizational talk in there as well. We're going to switch a little bit over to the customer side of once you have this up and running, it's going to work a certain way. There's going to be things that you need to think about as you plan this integration, as you start this project out. There's going to be things that you need to think about, how you're going to use this thing to operate within your organization once it's stood up, once it's running, once you've made it through implementation. And so we're going to move over and let Lindsay talk from her view of customer success and how our customers are using the integration. We see it from kind of the Geonexus integration platform perspective. But one of the things that she's going to talk about is reporting and the importance of thinking through your reporting as you plan your integration. So Lindsay, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. In order to make confident decisions with your data, reporting is an absolutely critical piece of integration. And there's a few things that you should look for when it comes to reporting. First, it's really important to know what changed during your integration. So looking for a reporting tool that provides the old and the new value and all of the things that changed during the integration. So that's recorded is really important. And you really want to watch out for a black box approach where your integration changes are not documented. The next thing you want to look for in a solution is something that detects inconsistencies in the data. So for example, you might have a field in GIS that says a pipe is 25 meters, and in your asset management system, it says that it's 20 meters. it's really important that when you're looking at a report, you're able to see this inconsistency so that your users can make an educated decision about what the correct value is and update that. And finally, you want a good way to communicate these findings from your synchronization to users. So you'll want to look for a system that automatically generates a report that can be sent to designated staff, and they can review that report, take action, as well as share that report with management. And so now I wanted to give a real world example of where reporting was really important. And this was a data integrity review that we did for a customer. This customer had a really mature Maximo system and GIS system, but they were managed completely separately. And they had a lot of redundant data entry processes. And because of that, members from both teams had a deep distrust of their data. So using our platform, we were able to review their data in what we call in our platform preview mode, which generates reports that can identify data issues. So this report identified data that was missing, as you can see here. It also identified records in GIS that had the same ID, linking them to Maximo. And this is referenced as a duplicate. And so something like this is most likely caused by like a copy paste action in GIS during the data entry process. There were also discrepancies with asset specifications. So for example, GIS indicated that a transformer had a KVA rating of 25, where Maximo indicated a rating of 5 for the same asset. And discrepancies like this are extremely problematic for an organization trying to make informed decisions about their assets. So using our platform and the reporting functionality, they were able to do this comparison, and it really led their data cleanup efforts by identifying these issues.
So Lindsay, one thing that I noticed there about discrepancies, there's just a quick question. Can you touch on what organizations should do, or what members of an organization should do when they find a discrepancy in their report? Like, how should they deal with that? What's the best practice around that?
Yeah, great question. So the first thing is, it's not uncommon to find discrepancies in reports. So particularly with bidirectional synchronization. But the key is to make sure that you have a workflow in place for handling any discrepancies that come up. So you get the report to the right team, either the GIS or the asset management team, and they can make an informed decision about what the correct record is.
Perfect. Thanks. That's great. So moving forward to our last best practice here, we've kind of worked our way through the life cycle of setting this thing up and having this thing running. But one of the things about integrations that we talk about often is just the ongoing life of that integration, right? I think oftentimes an integration is thought about as this initial project that you're going to take on to set up a connection between your two systems. But an integration is really a living thing. As your systems change and as variables within those systems change, you have to keep an eye on the integration, right? And one of the ways that we manage that is giving the platform to make it easier to kind of maintain that integration. But it's really a thing that you need to think about as you go forward, as you plan to go forward with an integration, because you do have to have a team that's going to be focused on managing this integration, just like you manage the edge systems that it's connecting. And so Lindsay's going to talk to us a little bit, again, with her customer success view about what you need to be thinking about in terms of support and maintenance as you move forward in your integration planning.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Josh. So there are so many things to consider beyond the initial build implementation phase of an integration. So there's just a few factors here that can impact you post implementation that you should really consider before you choose your integration. So the first is version lock. So if you choose to build a custom integration or you're looking at a productized integration, you need to consider how version lock is handled by that solution. So version lock essentially means that because of your integration, you're unable to move to the latest version of your integrated systems without a substantial effort. So yeah, that's one of the big things you want to look at before you choose an integration. Then there's the burden on IT resources. So many integrations require a request to IT to make any changes. And often IT departments have a backlog that can be over a year. So just making a minor change can be a huge challenge. And if you have a productized solution where it's configuration rather than custom code, this may be a little bit easier. Finally, the last thing you want to think about is potential knowledge loss. So you might have a rockstar developer on staff who writes scripts to maintain or build an integration, but what happens when that staff member leaves or they move to a different position? So you really want to think about, is this a managed solution? What's going to happen if my resource leaves? So with all of these potential issues, you're going to want to look for a fully supported low code, no code solution. Because if you have a fully supported solution, let's say your resource leaves, you're going to have the support of that solutions team to kind of bridge the gap while you're missing that resource. And we have many customers that end up going with the Geonexus platform because of the flexibility that it provides as a fully supported solution. So I also have an example of a customer who's experienced the pain of version lock that I talked about on the last slide. So this customer built a tightly coupled integration in 2012 between their GIS and Maximo, and they were unable to upgrade either system because of the way that they had built this integration. And this integration was really difficult for them to manage or make changes to, and they were all just really frustrated with the poorly designed solution, and they didn't have any trust in their data. They were also stuck on ArcGIS 9.3 and Maximo 7.1, so they weren't getting the new functionality, the new exciting things in Esri or Maximo because they were stuck on these old versions. So after they were able to move to a supported platform, so they moved to the Geonexus platform, they were actually able to upgrade to the latest and greatest of both systems, and now they're able to do upgrades with no worries about breaking their integration.
Outstanding. I like the real world examples, Lindsay. Those are great. Thank you for bringing those to us. So a couple of key takeaways as we wrap up things here. So, we've gone through these 5 factors to consider. Obviously, there are many more that kind of come out of this thinking and come out of this questioning around what you're going to do and what the purpose of your integration is. But, here are a couple of the keys that we want you to take away from this webinar and think about. The first one here is, thinking about, or beginning with the end in mind, as the 7 habits teach us, right? Consider what your organization hopes to get out of this integration. Plan for, what success looks like. Think through what success looks like and plan accordingly. So, I think that's a really good one that James brought to us. Consider time. Consider the amount of resources and energy and time that you have to put into this project. And think through that build or buy. Think through what's really going to get you to that level of success that we talked about in the first bullet here, and how much time you have to get to that, right? Engage citizen integrators if you have that option, but think through, the time the project's going to take you, right? And then lastly, think through support and maintenance, right? How are you going to maintain this integration over the life, not just at setup and implementation, but over the life of the integration, what is it going to look like to support and maintain that integration and keep it running and keep it level with those edge systems that it's synchronizing or integrating between, right? So some really great information here. We did have one question that was brought to us, and I want to make sure that I have this right. I think there was a mention around some language that we use around tightly coupled versus loosely coupled in terms of an integration. And so I wanted to go to James and see if he would answer that. I think that came out in his section. So James, can you talk a little bit about what we mean when we talk about tightly coupled versus loosely coupled?
Yeah, so there's a few factors, right, that come into play. If you're describing something as tightly coupled or loosely coupled, it could be as simple as, is this platform that you're using to do the integration part of one of those systems you're trying to integrate with, right? So is this, right, there's some products out there like maximal spatial synchronization, right, or SAP PI, right? Those would be tightly coupled. They're sitting inside of a specific application. There's other third-party tools like that are out there. And if you're interested to hear some specifics on that, feel free to ask more questions, send us emails after. But I mean, that's right, the kind of the first level. The second level would be, is it a middleware, and is the system maintained? Is your connector maintained, right? The middleware solution that you're using. Right? Is the platform that you're using customized? Did you have to customize the endpoint? Therefore, it's tightly coupled to that customization versus something that is supported over time and is updated as those edge systems update. So I think those are the main factors there.
Perfect. Thanks for the clarification there, James. That's great. That's great. Perfect. So we're right at time here, wrapping up here. Wanted to share our email address with you. And if you have any more questions, as James said, feel free to reach out to us at info@geonexus.com. Remember the dash there. Feel free to visit our website at geonexus.com for more information on our platform. More information. So there's some great information on our blog about different elements that you should be thinking on beyond these 5 factors that we considered here. But if you'd like to have a conversation with us about your specific use case, your specific planning for integration, please feel free to reach out. We enjoy these conversations. We enjoy learning about the challenges that all types of organizations are going through. And most of all, we enjoy partnering with them to help solve those challenges. So if you'd like to have that discussion, please feel free to reach out to us, and we'd love to talk to you. So thank you for being with us today, and we will look forward to talking to you all in the future.